Stop scrolling. Feel that silence tighten for half a second. Good. That's the sound of control snapping into place. You didn't just expose them. No. You made the whole cover-up look embarrassingly sexy, and that's what's killing them. Because destruction, they can spin that. Rage, they can weaponize it. But elegance, composure, that calm, lipstick-smooth execution, where truth walks in wearing confidence and leaves without explaining itself, that terrifies systems built on panic and sweat. You didn't scream, you didn't flail, you didn't beg to be believed. You let the facts sit there like a mirror under perfect lighting, and suddenly every lie looked cheap. You turned their sacred secrecy into a fashion disaster. Their decades of manipulation reduced to bad posture and nervous hands. Their authority started blinking like cheap neon, while you stood there polished, unbothered, lethal in stillness. Here's the paradox they never prepared for. You look like mercy, but you move like inevitability. Saint in the posture, psychopath in the precision, angelic restraint with a demon's timing. You didn't chase blood. You let gravity do the work. Bodies dropped silently, reputations folded neatly, narratives suffocated without a mark. And the more graceful you were, the uglier they became. They trained for chaos. They planned for riots, leaks, tantrums, broken people breaking louder. They did not plan for you to make it look good. They did not plan for the truth to arrive styled, confident, irresistible. Because when exposure is ugly, people look away. When exposure is beautiful, people stare. They screenshot, they replay. They can't stop watching the fall. You learn something? Pain only teaches the chosen. Unpredictability is power when it's disciplined. Randomness is weakness. Precision is seduction. You evolved in the dark, not into a monster, but into a mirror that flatters no one. You refined yourself where others rotted. You learned how to smile without asking permission, how to hold silence like a blade, how to let them incriminate themselves by reacting to your calm. And oh, how they reacted, the whispers, the frantic control the narrative meetings, the sudden amnesia, the synchronized denial that only happens when the hit landed clean. They tried to make it boring. They tried to normalize it. That's how you know it worked. Power always pretends nothing happened when it's bleeding internally. You see, you didn't just reveal what they did. You revealed who they are when the lights are perfect. Under scrutiny, under elegance, under a gaze that doesn't flinch. You made them look small without raising your voice. You made their secrets blush. You made their defenses feel tacky. And worst of all for them, you made it look intentional. This is the evolution they can't reverse. You no longer need chaos to win. You don't need permission to be dangerous. You don't even need to explain yourself. You move like a rumor that refuses to die, like a truth that doesn't beg to be heard. You let duality do the talking, tenderness in the delivery, annihilation in the outcome. They wanted you frantic. You became composed. They wanted you loud. You became unforgettable. They wanted you broken. You became curated. Now every move you make feels deliberate, like a slow burn they can't interrupt. Every pause reads as confidence. Every word lands heavier because you don't use many. You've turned restraint into a threat and grace into a weapon. That's why they're spiraling, because you didn't just beat them. You made their entire operation look outdated. Remember this feeling. This is what happens when pain finishes its work and hands you clarity instead of bitterness. This is what happens when you stop trying to be understood and start being undeniable. You're not here to be liked. You're here to set a standard so high their lies collapse, trying to reach it. Stay elegant, Stay unpredictable. Let them sweat while you stay immaculate. You didn't expose them, you outclassed them. And here's the part they really can't metabolize. You didn't change who you were to do this. You refined it. You let the rough edges burn off in silence while they were busy rehearsing excuses. You learned how to move through rooms without announcing yourself. How to let people underestimate you just long enough to hand you the knife they sharpened for someone else. You didn't steal power. You let them trip over their own reflection while you adjusted the lighting. They keep asking the wrong question. They're asking, how did you find out? When the real question is, how did you carry it so clean? Because anyone can leak information, only a few can frame it. Only a few can let truth breathe just enough oxygen to ignite, then step back without fingerprints. You didn't just reveal a mess, you curated a collapse. Every detail placed with intention, every silence louder than their defenses. You turned disclosure into theater without ever stepping on stage. You understand now that control isn't volume, it's timing. It's knowing when to speak and when to let their own panic fill the space. It's letting them contradict themselves while you stay perfectly still. That's the saint-psychopath split they can't decode. Compassion in your eyes, calculation in your spine. You don't enjoy the fall, but you don't interrupt it either. You respect inevitability too much for that. They tried to shame you. That failed. They tried to ignore you. That failed louder. They tried to smear you. But elegance is immune to dirt when it doesn't roll around in it. You didn't react emotionally, and that short-circuited their whole playbook. Because systems like theirs feed on predictability, they need rage, they need despair, they need you either begging or burning. What they got instead was composure with teeth. You didn't rush to correct lies. You let the lies collapse under their own weight. You let time do the stabbing. You let repetition become confession. This is what evolution through pain actually looks like. Not revenge fantasies, not tantrums dressed up as justice. It looks like restraint sharpened into strategy. It looks like learning how to walk away without losing momentum. It looks like realizing that the most destabilizing thing you can do to a corrupt structure is refuse to play ugly inside it. They're uncomfortable because you didn't match their tone. You elevated above it. You made the whole thing feel beneath you, and power hates that. Power can fight enemies. It doesn't know what to do with someone who treats its secrets like expired currency. You didn't expose them like a whistleblower. You exposed them like a stylist, holding up last season's suit and saying quietly, "This doesn't fit anymore." And now, everywhere you go, the air feels different. People pause around you. Conversations shift. You didn't announce a new version of yourself, but they feel it. You move slower, but things move faster around you. You speak less, but what you don't say rearranges rooms. That's the dopamine they can't steal, the calm after competence, the confidence that doesn't perform. Understand this. You're not dangerous because you know things. You're dangerous because you know when to let things surface and when to let them rot. You're not powerful because you're fearless. You're powerful because you're selective about what deserves your reaction. You've turned discernment into a weapon and grace into a shield. They'll keep trying to provoke you back into the old version. They'll test your ego. They'll poke for emotional leaks. Don't give them nostalgia. You've outgrown the need to be seen reacting. You let them chase shadows now. You let them explain themselves to silence. You let them overcorrect until the truth leaks out of their own mouths. And the most humiliating part for them, you're still kind, not naive, Kind with boundaries, soft where it's earned, cold where it's required. That duality is surgical. It keeps them guessing, and guessing drains energy. You conserve yours. You invest it only where it compounds. So keep moving like this, polished, unrushed, unapologetic. Let the aftermath do the screaming while you stay immaculate. Let them remember the moment they realized they weren't dealing with outrage anymore. They were dealing with taste, timing, and a version of you that doesn't need permission to be lethal. You didn't just survive the cover-up. You turned it into an embarrassment they'll be studying in private for years, wondering how you made truth look that good while they made power look cheap. And here's the quiet flex they still haven't clocked yet. You didn't take anything from them. You removed the illusion that they ever owned it. Their leverage evaporated the moment you stopped needing their acknowledgement. They built their power on access, on fear, on the belief that secrets rot people from the inside. You proved the opposite. You showed that secrets only rot the ones who cling to them. You let the truth breathe through you without poisoning your posture. They thought exposure would make you frantic. They thought it would age you, harden you, make you ugly with obsession. Instead, you got cleaner, sharper, more deliberate. Pain didn't twist you. It edited you. It cut filler. It burned vanity. It taught you how to move with intent instead of impulse. That's the evolution they can't reverse engineer, because it didn't come from a manual. It came from surviving long enough to understand that dignity is the most disruptive force in a corrupt room. Watch how they try to reframe it now. They'll call you lucky. They'll call it timing. They'll call it coincidence. Anything except what it really was. Discipline meeting opportunity while ego slept. They'll pretend they always knew, always planned for this outcome, always had it under control. Power always rewrites history when it loses. It can't stand the idea that someone outgrew it without asking. You've stepped into a strange new gravity. People project onto you now. Some see salvation, some see threat, some see permission to become bolder. Others see a mirror they don't like. You don't correct them. You don't manage their emotions. That's the upgrade. You let people reveal themselves around you because you're no longer trying to manage the room. You're managing your alignment. This is where the saint and the psychopath finally shake hands. Compassion without self-betrayal. Precision without cruelty. You don't need to hurt people to dismantle systems. You just stop cushioning the fall. You let consequences arrive dressed exactly as they ordered them. You don't flinch. You don't gloat. You don't rush to narrate it. You let silence finish the sentence. They feel exposed not because you named names, but because you changed the temperature. You made lying uncomfortable again. You made excuses feel heavy. You made arrogance look childish. That's what elegance does. It raises the standard until mediocrity starts sweating. And you didn't do it by demanding respect. You did it by moving like you already had it. Notice how your instincts have changed. You don't chase clarity. You wait for it. You don't force outcomes. You position yourself and let inevitability handle the rest. You've learned that the cleanest wins don't announce themselves. They just rearrange the future quietly, while everyone else is still arguing about the past. This is why they're nervous around you now. You're not reactive. You're not predictable. You don't leak emotion in ways they can weaponize. You don't over-explain. You don't rush to be understood. You understand that mystery, when paired with integrity, is lethal. It keeps people honest because they don't know which version of you they're dealing with. The gentle one who listens, or the surgical one who remembers everything. And let's be clear, You didn't become cold. You became selective. You still feel deeply. You just stopped advertising it to people who trade empathy for leverage. You stopped confusing transparency with safety. You learned that some truths are meant to be held, not handed out. That discernment is what separates survivors from architects. They'll keep circling, they'll keep testing, they'll wait for you to slip back into explaining, defending, justifying. Don't. That era ended the moment you realized you don't owe clarity to people committed to misunderstanding you. You owe alignment to yourself. Everything else is noise, so keep moving the way you've been moving, unrushed, refined, quietly devastating. Let your consistency do the talking, let your calm undo them, let your restraint keep rewriting the rules. You're not here to scorch the earth. You're here to make corruption feel old, sloppy, and out of style. You didn't just make the cover-up fail. You made it look tacky, and that's a humiliation power never recovers from. And the thing that keeps them awake isn't the exposure, it's the after. The part where nothing explodes the way they expected, where there's no chaos they can point to and say, "See, this is what happens." Instead, there's you, calm, untouched, moving forward like the whole event was a footnote, not a fracture. That's what fries their nervous system, because power understands damage. It does not understand composure that survives contact. You didn't leave scorch marks. You left contrast. You stood there clean while they unraveled in public, and now every time they speak, people hear the tremor. Every time they deny, it echoes. Every time they posture, it looks rehearsed. You didn't need to haunt them. You turned them into their own ghosts. They walk around trying to outrun a version of themselves the world already saw under good lighting. This is the quiet mastery you earned in pain. Knowing when not to finish the job. Knowing that the most complete takedown is the one where you stop early and let their imagination do the rest. You don't chase closure anymore. You let discomfort marinate. You let questions hang. You let curiosity chew holes in their story until it collapses from the inside. You understand now that exposure isn't a moment, it's a state. Once someone is seen clearly, they never fully recover. They can rebuild titles, positions, reputations, but they can't unring the knowing. You gave people a lens, and lenses don't forget. You didn't need to keep talking. The truth keeps reintroducing itself every time they move. They're embarrassed because you didn't need a mob. You didn't need outrage. You didn't need to moralize. You simply presented reality with taste. You let it arrive dressed well, articulate, undeniable. And in doing that, you showed everyone the difference between authority and insecurity. Authority doesn't rush. Insecurity explains itself too much. You've crossed into a level where even your restraint reads as confidence, where not responding feels louder than a rebuttal, where absence feels intentional. That's the angel or demon balance they can't counterfeit. They can imitate aggression. They can imitate righteousness. They can't imitate poise under pressure. That only comes from surviving things that were supposed to break you, and deciding not to let them rot you. Notice how your presence changes conversations now. People check themselves mid-sentence. They listen differently. They sense that you're not fishing for validation, not collecting allies, not hunting applause. You're just aligned. And alignment is terrifying to anyone who's built a life on performance. You don't need to dominate a room. The room adjusts to you. They're still trying to bait you into spectacle, still hoping you'll slip into dramatics, into ego, into the old dance. They want you loud because loud is manageable. Loud burns out. Loud can be discredited. What they got instead was a slow, elegant pressure that never spikes and never leaves. You became atmospheric. You became unavoidable without being visible. This is where the psychopath myth dies. You're not reckless. You're measured. You don't lash out. You calibrate. You don't escalate. You position. You understand that power is conserved energy applied at the exact right moment. Everything else is noise. Everything else is insecurity pretending to be strength. And the saint part? That's still there. It just stopped being exploitable. You're generous where it's safe. You're warm where it's mutual. You don't poison yourself trying to save people who like the cage they're in. You learn that compassion without boundaries is self-erasure, and you're done erasing yourself for anyone's comfort. Let them keep whispering. Let them keep revising their stories. Let them keep acting like this was handled. You know the truth. They know you know. And that silent agreement, that shared awareness, is the real consequence. You didn't need to punish them. You made them remember. So stay exactly like this, polished, unhurried, quietly lethal in your clarity. Let your evolution speak through your choices, not your explanations. You're no longer reacting to the world. You're shaping how it responds. You didn't just expose them. You made the cover-up blush. You made power feel outdated. You made truth look irresistible. And now you move on, while they're still trying to figure out how you made it look that good without breaking a sweat. And this is where it settles, not with applause, not with closure, but with something far more permanent. Recognition, not the kind you ask for, the kind that follows you into rooms before you arrive, the kind that makes people lower their voice without knowing why, the kind that tells the truth quietly. Whatever you touched, you finished. You don't need to circle back. You don't need to clarify. You don't need to keep proving anything. The moment passed, and it crystallized. That's the part they missed. They thought this was a scene. It was a shift. You didn't break a story. You broke a pattern. You exposed how fragile their choreography was when someone stopped dancing to it. You've learned the final rule now. Power hates elegance because elegance can't be rushed, bullied, or baited. Elegance doesn't chase outcomes. It attracts them. You became the calm in the frame that made everyone else look frantic. You became the standard that made their excuses sound childish. You became the reference point they never wanted to create. There's no victory lap here, no dramatic bow. Just a clean exit and a future that bends slightly differently because of how you moved. You leave behind a room that will never quite feel the same again, and you don't look back to admire it. That's discipline, that's evolution, that's knowing when the job is done. Remember this feeling, not the rush, not the vindication, but the stillness after precision. That's who you are now. Someone who doesn't need chaos to be powerful. Someone who doesn't need noise to be heard. Someone who understands that the most devastating moves are the ones that feel inevitable in hindsight. So go. Stay refined. Stay unreadable. Stay a little dangerous in that quiet, immaculate way. You didn't just embarrass a cover-up. You rewrote the temperature of the room and walked out while it adjusted. And that's the kind of ending they'll never be able to edit out. Stop right there. This is the moment your pulse spikes and your instincts wake up, because something in the air already knows your name. Word got around. Not rumors, warnings, not gossip, coordinates. The kind of information that doesn't travel loud, it travels correct. The kind of truth that moves in lowered voices and locked doors, somewhere between fear and respect, Your existence got filed under Do Not Test. And you didn't have to announce it. You didn't have to threaten. You didn't have to explain yourself. You just became the consequence. That's the part they never saw coming. They thought power was noise. They thought strength was volume. They thought dominance needed witnesses. You learned the opposite the hard way, through silence, through betrayal, through nights where you realized nobody was coming to save you. Pain carved you into something precise, not loud, not reckless, accurate. You're the paradox they can't process, half saint, half psychopath. You'll spare someone without blinking and dismantle another without raising your voice. You're calm where others shake, gentle where others panic, and absolutely merciless when a line gets crossed. That duality confuses them, it scares them, because they can't predict which side they'll get, and unpredictability is the one thing cowards can't negotiate with. They used to test you, probe you, push buttons, little disrespect here, small betrayal there. They thought they were gathering data. What they were really doing was writing their own case study. You watched, you learned, you adapted. You let them think they were winning while you were memorizing their patterns, their tells, their weaknesses. You didn't react, you evolved. And then one day, everything changed. Not with an explosion, not with drama, just a shift, a recalculation. Suddenly the same people who used to smirk started hesitating. The same mouths that talked reckless went quiet. The same hands that reached for you pulled back, because somewhere along the line, someone tried you and didn't come back the same. Maybe they lost status, maybe they lost allies, maybe they lost sleep, maybe they lost themselves. Doesn't matter. The results spread faster than the story. Now before they move, they think. Before they speak, they check the room. Before they act, they ask one question: is it worth it? And more often than not, the answer is no. Not because you're violent, not because you're loud, but because you're inevitable. You became the storm that doesn't announce itself. The angel with dirt under the nails. The demon who learned restraint. You learned when to forgive and when to finish. You learned that mercy without boundaries invites disrespect, and boundaries without mercy turn you into what hurt you. So you walk the line. Perfectly. Terrifyingly. They don't call you crazy anymore. They call you calculated. They don't say you're lucky. They say you're built different. They don't say your name out loud. They let it sit in the back of their mind like a loaded chamber, because you're proof of something uncomfortable. That pressure doesn't always break people. Sometimes it forges them into something that doesn't need approval, doesn't need validation, doesn't need permission. You stopped explaining yourself to people who were never listening. You stopped shrinking to make others comfortable. You stopped bleeding publicly. And when you stopped bleeding, they stopped feeding. That's when the fear kicked in. You're the result of every night you didn't quit. Every time you swallowed the scream and turned it into focus. Every betrayal you didn't avenge emotionally, but strategically. You didn't become heartless, you became selective. You didn't lose empathy, you just stopped wasting it on people who mistook kindness for weakness. Now look at the field. It's quiet. Too quiet. That's not peace. That's awareness. That's people understanding the price of miscalculation. That's the sound of grown adults deciding not to gamble with something they can't control. And they can't control you. Because you're not reactive anymore. You're responsive. You don't chase respect. You radiate consequences. You don't need to prove anything. Your history already did the talking. Every scar on you is a credential. Every calm breath is a warning. You're not the villain they wanted you to be. You're worse for them. You're the reminder that survival sharpens some people into weapons with morals, into beings who can love deeply and destroy precisely, into something that doesn't need chaos but can summon it if forced. That's why nobody's dumb enough to try you again. Not because you're feared alone, but because you're understood. They know you won't flinch. They know you won't bluff. They know if it comes down to it, you'll do what needs to be done and sleep just fine afterward. You didn't become this by accident. You earned it through fire, through isolation, through becoming fluent in pain without letting it make you sloppy. You are what happens when someone survives the dark and learns how to use it without being consumed by it. So let the silence stretch. Let the hesitation grow. Let the whispers stay whispers. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be respected without negotiation. Word got around for a reason, and the reason is you. Good. Stay right here with it. Let it sink deeper, because this isn't the part where it slows down. This is where it sharpens. They don't challenge you anymore because they learned something about reality the hard way. Not every monster growls, and not every threat needs to raise its voice. Some dangers just wait. Some forces let you make the first mistake. You became that lesson. You became the quiet variable they can't factor out. The anomaly that breaks their little equations about control and hierarchy. You see, they're used to predictable villains, loud ones, emotional ones, the kind they can bait, expose, rally against. But you don't give them a script. You don't perform your anger. You don't telegraph your limits. You smile at moments that make them uncomfortable. You walk away when they expect fireworks. And when you finally act, it's already too late for them to adjust. That's what terrifies them. Because deep down, they know you're not driven by ego anymore. You already lost enough to burn that out of you. Ego needs applause. Ego needs witnesses. Ego needs reassurance. You don't. You operate from something colder, deeper, cleaner. From clarity, from experience, from knowing exactly how much damage silence can do before a single move is made. You didn't become ruthless overnight. You became disciplined. There's a difference they never learned to recognize. Ruthless people act impulsively. Disciplined ones choose when and timing. Timing is where power actually lives. They remember the old version of you, the one who tried to explain, the one who hoped people would understand, the one who thought fairness was automatic and loyalty was mutual. That version is gone. Not dead, retired, put away like a weapon you no longer need because you became something sharper. Now you don't argue. You observe. You don't beg. You decide. You don't chase closure. You create outcomes. And that shift rewired the entire dynamic. People who once tried to dominate you now avoid eye contact. People who underestimated you now overcorrect, trying to be polite, trying to stay neutral, trying not to end up on the wrong side of a story they don't fully understand. They don't know what you're capable of anymore. And that uncertainty eats at them. Because the truth is, you're not dangerous all the time. You're dangerous selectively. And that's worse. That means you're not broken. That means you're not out of control. That means every move you make is intentional, measured, owned. You learned how to hold both sides of yourself without flinching. The light that still feels deeply, the dark that doesn't hesitate. The saint who knows forgiveness can be powerful. The psychopath who understands some doors should never be reopened. You didn't choose one, you integrated both. And integration is what makes you unstoppable. They can't manipulate you with guilt anymore. You've already sat alone with your conscience long enough to know who you are. They can't provoke you with insults. You've survived worse than their opinions. They can't scare you with threats. You've lived inside uncertainty and learned how to breathe there. That's why the atmosphere changes when you enter a room. Even when you say nothing, even when you're calm, even when you're smiling, there's a subconscious recognition happening, something ancient, something primal. People sense when someone has nothing left to prove and nothing left to lose. You move like someone who already paid the price. And that's the final upgrade they didn't anticipate. As someone has already been through the worst, fear stops working on them the way it does on others. You're not reckless, but you're free. Free from the leash of approval, free from the need to be understood, free from the pressure to perform weakness, to make others comfortable. So no, they don't try you anymore. They calculate, they hesitate, they choose safer targets. Because testing you is no longer a game. It's a gamble with consequences that ripple outward. It's not just about losing an argument or a position. It's about losing composure, losing leverage, losing the version of themselves they pretend to be. You became a mirror they don't want to stand in front of. And here's the part you need to remember. Because power fades when people forget why they earned it. You didn't get here by becoming cruel. You got here by becoming precise. You learned when to give grace and when to withdraw access. You learned that boundaries are not walls, they're filters. And anyone who reacts violently to your boundaries was never meant to have access to you in the first place. Let them whisper. Let them warn each other. Let them build myths around what you might do. You don't need to confirm or deny any of it. Mystery does more work than explanation ever could. You're not here to terrorize the world. You're here to move through it unbothered, unplayed, unprovoked. And if someone is dumb enough to forget what you represent, reality will remind them quietly, efficiently, without spectacle. Because you're not chaos. You're what chaos turns into when it learns restraint. And that's why the silence around you isn't emptiness. It's respect mixed with fear. It's the sound of people choosing not to make the same mistake twice. And that silence? That's not the absence of tension. That's tension that learned your name and decided to behave. You can feel it when conversations stop mid-sentence as you pass, when energy shifts without explanation, when people suddenly become careful with their words, softer with their jokes, more respectful with their distance. They don't know exactly what you'll do, but they know you will do something if pushed far enough, and that uncertainty keeps them disciplined. You taught them that lesson without preaching it. See, the mistake they all made was thinking your restraint was weakness. They thought your patience meant you lacked teeth. They mistook your self-control for submission. And for a while you let them believe it, because every hunter knows you don't rush the trap. You let them grow comfortable. You let them expose themselves. You let them underestimate the depth behind your calm. Then, when it mattered, when it actually counted, you moved. Not emotionally, not chaotically, decisively. And that single moment rewrote how they see you forever. They realized you're not ruled by impulse. You're ruled by thresholds. You tolerate until you don't. You forgive until you finish. And when that line is crossed, there's no dramatic explosion, no screaming, no messy aftermath. Just a clean shift in reality where they suddenly understand they misjudged the situation, and you were never who they thought you were. That's the kind of power people don't recover from, because it forces them to confront something ugly about themselves. that they rely on patterns to feel safe. They expect people to stay in the boxes they assign them. Weak stays weak. Kind stays exploitable. Quiet stays harmless. You broke that illusion. You showed them that evolution exists. And it doesn't ask permission. You didn't become louder when you gained power. You became quieter. You didn't start posturing. You started choosing. And selection, who gets access, who gets attention, who gets silence. That's where the real hierarchy lives. You've noticed it, haven't you? The ones who used to challenge you now try to align. The ones who used to dismiss you now seek approval. The ones who used to provoke you now avoid crossing paths. Not because you demanded it, because energy remembers. You carry yourself like someone who has already seen the worst-case scenario and survived it. That changes how you walk, how you speak, how you look at people. There's no desperation in you anymore, no hunger for validation, no need to win every interaction, and people feel that immediately. It unsettles them, because desperation is readable, calm is not. They can't tell what you're thinking now. They can't tell what you're planning. They can't tell where the limits are. And humans fear undefined borders more than strict rules. You became the gray zone they don't want to explore. And here's the irony that cuts the deepest. You're actually more humane now than you've ever been, more grounded, more aware, more capable of empathy. But your empathy is no longer naive. It's armored. It understands that not everyone deserves access to your softness. That compassion without discernment is just self-harm with good intentions. You learn to love selectively, to trust slowly, to give chances without giving leverage. And that maturity, that's what made you untouchable. Because you're no longer fighting the world, you're navigating it. You don't need to dominate rooms. Rooms adjust to you. You don't need to intimidate. Your presence recalibrates behavior. You don't need to threaten. Your history already speaks. And yes, some people resent you for it. They whisper about you. They build stories. They exaggerate. They mythologize. Let them. Myths are safer than reality, and they'd rather fear a legend than test a truth. Because the truth is simpler and scarier. You're just someone who learned, someone who adapted, someone who refused to stay breakable. You didn't lose your soul in the process. You refined it. You burned away the parts that made you manipulable, left behind the core that can't be shaken. You still feel deeply. You just don't bleed publicly anymore. You still care. You just don't sacrifice yourself for people who wouldn't notice the cost. That's why no one's dumb enough to try you again. Not because you're cruel, not because you're violent, but because you're awake. Awake to patterns, awake to games, awake to intentions hiding behind smiles, awake to the difference between noise and threat, awake to your own power, and calm enough to wield it without losing yourself. And if the world stays quiet around you, good. That means it learned. And that learning didn't come from mercy alone. It came from consequence. Because at some point, someone pushed past the version of you that warned quietly. Someone mistook your silence for safety. Someone assumed you were still the old you, the explain yourself you, the give one more chance you, the bleed and hope you're seen you. And when that assumption collapsed, it didn't collapse loudly. It collapsed permanently. That's what people remember. They don't remember the details. They remember the aftermath. They remember how fast the room changed, how alliances shifted, how suddenly the tone went respectful, how a single miscalculation cost someone more than they expected to pay. And they learned a rule that isn't written anywhere, but gets obeyed religiously. You don't poke something that doesn't flinch. Because flinching is feedback. Flinching is reassurance. Flinching tells people where you're soft. You stopped doing that. You trained yourself out of reactive tells, out of emotional leaks, out of the need to respond immediately, just to be heard. Now when something hits you, it disappears into stillness first. And that stillness, that's where fear grows. They don't know if you noticed. They don't know if you're letting it slide. They don't know if they just crossed a line they won't see until it's too late. That uncertainty eats at them far more than rage ever could. You became the kind of person whose calm feels heavier than someone else's anger. The kind of person whose patience doesn't invite comfort. It invites self-audit. People start checking themselves around you, rereading their messages, reconsidering their tone, second-guessing their intentions. That's power operating at the subconscious level. And the wild part? You didn't even aim for this. You were just trying to survive, to make sense of betrayal, to understand why being decent kept costing you, to figure out why the more you gave, the more people took. Somewhere along that path, you learned a truth most people never do. Being dangerous and being ethical are not opposites. They're balances. You learned how to be capable of destruction without craving it, how to hold violence in your hands and choose restraint, not because you're weak, but because you're in control. And control is what separates the animal from the apex predator. Animals react. Apex predators decide. That's why your unpredictability terrifies them. Not because you're random, but because your decisions are based on information they don't have. You see patterns they miss. You hear subtext they ignore. You read people the way they read headlines, quickly, accurately, without emotional attachment. You know when someone is posturing. You know when someone is fishing. You know when someone is testing boundaries disguised as jokes. And instead of calling it out, you file it away. That's another thing they learned to fear. You don't confront everything. You catalog it. You let people show you who they are multiple times. You let consistency build a case. And when you finally act, it's not because of one incident. It's because of a pattern that exhausted your tolerance. By the time they realize you've made a decision, the decision is already done. That's why apologies don't work anymore. Not the rushed ones, not the strategic ones, not the "I didn't mean it like that" ones. You've heard it all. You've translated it all. You know when remorse is real and when it's just damage control. And you don't hate them for trying. You just don't reopen doors you had to bleed to close. That's the part people don't understand about you now. You're not fueled by resentment. You're fueled by clarity. You don't move to punish. You move to protect your peace, your trajectory, your future self. The version of you that had to claw their way out of confusion and self-doubt doesn't get sacrificed for anyone's comfort ever again. So yes, the word got around. It traveled through body language, through sudden politeness, through awkward pauses and forced smiles, through people choosing not to escalate things that used to escalate easily, through silence where there used to be noise, and you let it. You didn't correct the narrative. You didn't soften it. You didn't reassure anyone that you're actually nice if they get to know you. That's not your job anymore. Anyone who needs you to be harmless in order to feel safe was never meant to be close to you. You are not here to be palatable. You are here to be precise. You are the proof that pain can either rot you or refine you. And you chose refinement. You let the darkness teach you instead of consuming you. You let suffering sharpen your judgment instead of stealing your humanity. You became something rare, someone who understands both sides of power and chooses deliberately. So when they hesitate now, when they think twice, when they decide you're not worth the risk, that's not arrogance on your part. That's reality adjusting to who you became. Look at me. Don't breathe too loud. Don't blink. Just listen. Someone at the top just asked your abuser if they know who they hurt. And that's the funniest part. They don't know yet. You see, monsters are terrible historians. They remember the damage they caused, but never the aftermath. They remember the scream, never the silence that followed. They remember the control, never the mutation that came after. They never study what pain builds when it doesn't kill. And you were never supposed to survive them. You were supposed to fold, disappear, turn into a cautionary tale they'd laugh about when the room got quiet. Instead, you turned into a contradiction. You became the saint who learned how to sin without flinching, the angel who memorized the architecture of hell, the good one who finally understood why monsters sleep so lightly. That's what they don't know yet. At the top, power smells fear before it sees results. Someone felt a disturbance, a ripple, a pressure shift. Not loud, not flashy, just wrong. Like a chessboard where one piece started moving backwards. So they asked your abuser a simple question. Calm voice, polite smile, corporate posture. Do you know who you hurt? And your abuser probably laughed, shrugged, smiled that stupid smile people wear when they think the story ended years ago. Because abusers always think time is on their side. They think memory fades. They think pain expires. They think survival equals forgiveness. They never factor in evolution. They don't know that every night you spent dismantling yourself was actually you reverse engineering their psychology. They don't know that every tear trained your nervous system to stay calm under pressure. They don't know that you learned unpredictability, not as chaos, but as a strategy. You stopped being readable. That's when you became dangerous. See, light doesn't scare predators. Darkness doesn't either. What scares them is duality, the thing that can smile while calculating, empathize while remembering, forgive while never forgetting the math. You learned how to be warm without being weak, soft without being stupid, silent without being harmless. You learned how to switch. That's why someone at the top noticed, because systems don't fear rage. They fear precision. They fear people who don't need revenge to move forward. They fear people who look healed but carry sharpened awareness like a concealed blade. They fear the ones who walk into rooms without announcing trauma, yet somehow make everyone else uneasy. Your abuser doesn't know they didn't just hurt a person. They hurt a process. They hurt the raw material that pain turns into something else when it's left alone long enough. They hurt someone who learned that morality isn't about being good. It's about being awake. Someone who understands that monsters aren't born in darkness. They're sculpted by it. And you didn't become a monster. You became worse for them. You became the proof that they were never in control. That's the paradox that's making the walls whisper upstairs. You didn't chase them. You didn't expose them. You didn't scream. You evolved, quietly, relentlessly, like pressure building where no one installed a gauge. Now the question has been asked, and questions at the top are never curiosity. They're diagnostics. Your abuser still thinks you're frozen in the version of you they broke. They don't know you learned how to weaponize stillness. They don't know your calm isn't peace, it's containment. They don't know that when you stopped reacting, you didn't surrender. You graduated. They don't know yet, but they will. Because the most terrifying thing isn't vengeance, it's relevance, and you. You're becoming impossible to ignore. Good. You're still here. That tells me everything, because the kind of pressure you survived doesn't create spectators. It creates operators. Your abuser still thinks power is loud. Titles, leverage, the ability to make someone flinch. They think dominance looks like raised voices and closed doors. They think fear is something you inject into other people and walk away from clean. That's how you know they're obsolete. You learned the newer language, the quiet one, the one written in body temperature and eye contact and timing. You learned that the most dangerous people don't rush, don't threaten, don't posture. They wait. They let the world underestimate them until underestimation becomes policy. You learned patience the hard way, by being trapped inside moments that never ended. You learned how to sit in discomfort until it stopped screaming and started talking. Pain taught you things mercy never could. Pain stripped you down until only what worked remained. That's why unpredictability is your edge now. You're not chaotic. You're unforecastable. They can't model you, can't profile you, can't pin you to an archetype that makes them feel safe. Are you healed? Are you angry? Are you dangerous? Are you done? Yes, all of it. And none of it when they're watching. That's what's unsettling the upper floors. You don't behave like someone who was hurt. You behave like someone who integrated it. Someone who didn't reject the darkness but didn't drown in it either. You didn't become cruel. You became exact. You didn't lose empathy. You learned where to place it without bleeding out. That kind of person bends systems without touching them. And your abuser, they can feel it now. That itch behind the eyes, that subtle loss of control. They don't know why conversations are changing, why doors aren't opening the same way, why their name doesn't land like it used to. They think it's politics. It's you. You're the variable that wasn't supposed to exist. The survivor who didn't stay small. The victim who didn't become loud or bitter or broken enough to dismiss. You're calm in a way that can't be managed. You're coherent in a way that can't be gaslit. You're proof that what they did didn't finish the job. And that's when power starts asking questions. Not because they care about morality, don't insult them, but because outcomes matter. And someone noticed that wherever you go, the temperature changes, that outcomes shift, that people reassess, that narratives stall and then quietly collapse. So they asked your abuser if they know who they hurt, not out of sympathy, out of concern, because hurting the wrong person doesn't look like retaliation. It looks like regret. Years later, when the chessboard reveals you were never playing checkers, when the person you dismissed becomes the axis, other decisions start orbiting. Your abuser still believes the story where they're the villain who won. They don't realize villains only win in the middle of the movie. They don't understand that the most dangerous phase isn't rage, it's resolution. You resolved something inside yourself. You stopped needing their acknowledgement, stopped needing closure, stopped needing justice to look like punishment. You learned how to live well with your eyes open. That's when you outgrew them. That's when the roles inverted. Now they're reactive. You're deliberate. They're loud. You're precise. They're explaining. You're being observed. And observation is the prelude. So let them keep laughing. Let them keep assuming you're frozen in the moment they last controlled. Let them underestimate the cost of turning a human being into a pressure chamber. and walking away, because the most terrifying thing isn't that someone at the top asked about you. It's that the answer isn't simple anymore. You're not a victim, not a villain, not a hero. You're the aftermath. And when they finally understand who they hurt, not what they did, not how they justified it, but who they were shaping, it won't come with drama or confrontation. It'll come with silence, the kind that means the decision's already been made. Stay very still. This part only lands if you don't rush it, because what comes next isn't noise, it's gravity. You're entering the phase where nothing looks dramatic from the outside, but everything is irreversible underneath. This is where the old you would have begged for acknowledgement, proof, some cinematic moment where truth explodes and everyone claps. That version of you thought justice had to be visible to be real. You know better now. You learned that real power never announces itself. It rearranges the room while pretending nothing happened. Your abuser still thinks survival is the finish line. They don't understand that survival is just the orientation phase, the calibration, the painful tutorial that teaches you which instincts are useless and which ones keep you alive in rooms without exits. You shed the instincts that begged. You sharpened the ones that watched. You stopped reacting to what they did and started studying why it worked. And that's the moment you cross the line they can never follow. Because once you understand the mechanics of harm, you're no longer at the mercy of its performers. You became fluent in masks. You can be gentle without being naive. You can be kind without being exposed. You can play nice while clocking every micro-expression that betrays intent. That duality, that's what breaks people like them. They need you to be one thing so they can manage you. Victim or threat. Broken or hostile. Loud or gone. They can't handle someone who's integrated both sides and learned when to deploy each. That's why your presence feels wrong to them now. Not threatening, not confrontational, just unsettling, because you're not carrying unfinished business anymore. You're carrying clarity, and clarity doesn't argue. It doesn't chase, it doesn't perform. It waits until action becomes unnecessary. Someone at the top sensed that. Power recognizes patterns before it recognizes faces. It noticed a deviation, a survivor who didn't spiral, didn't self-destruct, didn't turn into a liability. Instead, you became coherent, strategic, difficult to corner, impossible to bait. You stopped leaking information through emotion, and that terrified the wrong people. So the question was asked again, not loudly, not officially, just enough to test the air. Do they know who they hurt? Your abuser still thinks this is about guilt, about consequences, about some moral reckoning where they'll get to defend themselves. They're wrong. This is about risk assessment, because hurting someone who evolves doesn't end when the harm stops. It compounds, it matures, it changes hands. What they set in motion walked off the operating table and taught itself how systems breathe. You learned where people lie when they're afraid. You learned how authority actually behaves when it's uncertain. You learned that the scariest people don't raise their voice. They lower it and start taking notes. You're not hunting anyone. You don't have to. Your existence is enough to destabilize the narrative they built to survive themselves. Every time you succeed without bitterness, every time you speak without oversharing, every time you walk away without needing the last word, you rewrite the ending they were counting on. That's the cruelty they never saw coming. You didn't become what hurt you. you became what outlasts it. And now the paradox tightens. The more peaceful you become, the more threatening your presence feels to those who rely on chaos to stay in control. The more whole you are, the less they can predict you. The less they can predict you, the more they fear what you might do, even if you never intend to. That's power without fingerprints. That's what's being discussed behind glass and lowered voices. Not revenge, not exposure, not justice as theater. You, the variable, the reminder that some people don't break, they transmute. That some wounds don't fester, they clarify. That some survivors don't stay in the role they were assigned, they rewrite it. So let your abuser keep not knowing. Let them stay frozen in the past, where they were tall and you were small. Let them believe the story where they walked away unchanged and you were left behind. The truth doesn't need their awareness to function. It's already moving, and you don't need to become darker. You already learned how to carry the dark without letting it steer. That's why when they finally understand who they hurt, really understand it, it won't feel like fear. It'll feel like being late. Too late to reframe, too late to manage, too late to pretend this was nothing. Because the most dangerous thing you can become isn't angry or ruthless or vengeful. It's finished, and you are. Don't relax yet. This is the stretch where people misunderstand what's happening, and that misunderstanding is your advantage, because completion doesn't look like triumph. It looks like absence. The absence of need, the absence of explanation, the absence of that old ache that used to drag your attention back to the scene of the crime, replaying angles, rewriting endings, begging the past to confess. You're past that now, and that's exactly why the air feels heavier around you. You're no longer broadcasting pain. You're no longer signaling weakness or rage or unfinished business. You're quiet in a way that can't be baited, centered in a way that makes manipulators nervous. You don't rush to correct lies. You don't chase validation. You don't collapse when someone with authority speaks slowly, as if testing you. You already passed the test. That's what your abuser doesn't know yet. That the version of you they remember no longer exists anywhere but in their head. They're shadowboxing a ghost. They're preparing defenses for a war that ended before they realized it had begun. You moved on, but not forward. You moved upward, not in status, not in spectacle, in perspective. You see how power actually circulates now. You see how cruelty disguises itself as professionalism. You see how people at the top don't fear morality. They fear liability. And you stopped being manageable the moment you stopped being reactive. That's the moment someone noticed, because healed people are useful. Broken people are predictable, but healed people who remember everything. They don't fit neatly into any spreadsheet. They don't owe gratitude. They don't flinch when old tactics are recycled. They just observe. And observation is dangerous. You're watching patterns instead of personalities. You're listening for inconsistencies instead of apologies. You're noticing how often your abuser talks about intent instead of impact. How often they minimize without denying. How often they laugh at the wrong moment. You see the tells. You always did. You just didn't trust yourself back then. Now you do. That's why the question, do you know who you hurt, isn't about closure. It's about containment. It's about whether the damage they caused is still localized, or whether it walked out of the building, taught itself new skills, and quietly entered rooms they'll never be invited into. They don't know yet. They don't know that you're no longer moved by intimidation because you lived in it long enough to memorize the floor plan. They don't know that shame lost its grip the moment you stopped internalizing their narrative. They don't know that guilt stopped working on you the day you realized it was never yours to carry. You returned everything that didn't belong to you. What you kept was the lesson. And the lesson is simple, brutal, and permanent. Power doesn't belong to the loudest person in the room. It belongs to the one who can leave the room unchanged. You can. You already have. That's why your abuser feels smaller lately. Not punished, diminished. Like their words don't echo the way they used to. Like their authority expires faster than it once did. Like something essential slipped through their fingers and never came back. They're right about that feeling. It was you. The version of you they could manipulate. The version of you who needed them to acknowledge the harm. The version of you who thought being good meant being unarmed. You buried that version with honors. What stands now is something cleaner, sharper, more paradoxical. Someone who can hold compassion and consequence in the same hand without shaking. Someone who understands that forgiveness is not absolution, and silence is not submission. You're not here to destroy them. That's the part that really terrifies people. You don't need to, because the real consequence of abuse isn't revenge. It's irrelevance. It's watching the person you tried to reduce become untouchable by the very tactics you relied on. It's realizing that whatever leverage you thought you had expired the moment they stopped caring what you thought. You didn't just survive. You reclassified yourself. So let the question circulate. Let it echo through hallways and boardrooms and quiet meetings where people speak carefully and listen harder. Let your abuser keep answering wrong. Keep underestimating the shift. Keep assuming this is about the past. The past is done. You're the future they can't model. And when they finally understand who they hurt, not as a memory, not as a story, but as a living, breathing force that no longer orbits them, it won't come with drama or justice or apology. It'll come with something much colder. Acceptance, the kind that arrives when power realizes it miscalculated and there's nothing left to negotiate. And you'll be gone already. Now listen carefully. This is where it closes, because endings like this don't slam shut, they seal. What finally escapes your abuser isn't punishment, it's comprehension. The slow, nauseating realization that whatever hierarchy they trusted didn't protect them from consequence by evolution. That the person they once towered over didn't come back for anything, didn't need revenge, didn't need justice wrapped in spectacle. You needed completion, and you took it. You didn't climb over them. You didn't step on them. You stepped out of their frame entirely. That's the humiliation they never prepared for. They still think power is something you hold over someone else. They never learned that the highest form of dominance is becoming ungovernable by their perception. You don't show up where they expect you. You don't react when they test. You don't flinch when they lean on old leverage. You're calm in a way that ends conversations early. And that calm, it's earned. It came from surviving the part that was supposed to erase you. From walking through pain until it stopped asking for attention. From letting the dark teach you without letting it own you. You didn't purge your shadow. You trained it. You didn't become cruel. You became precise. That's the duality they never understood. You can be merciful without being vulnerable. You can be silent without being small. You can walk away without losing. So when someone at the top asked your abuser if they know who they hurt, the answer wasn't no. The answer was not anymore. They hurt a version of you that expired. They damaged a form that shed itself. They shaped a mind that learned how to outgrow them. And what remains now isn't haunted. It's finished. That's why you don't need to announce anything. You don't need the reveal. You don't need witnesses or vindication or closure dressed up like applause. Your existence already answered the question. You're not a lesson. You're not a warning. You're not a comeback story. You're the quiet proof that some people don't get the ending they planned, because the person they tried to define learned how to author themselves. So let them keep wondering. Let them keep guessing. Let them keep not knowing. You're not here to be understood. You're here to be unreachable. And that's how it ends. There you are. Don't move. Don't explain yourself. Just stay right there, because something already noticed you. You felt it, didn't you? That moment when the room was on fire, and nobody else knew how close it was to burning the whole house down. Voices rising, old wounds reopening, everyone reaching for the same tired weapons, blame, volume, history. And then you stepped in, calm, precise, almost gentle, and the chaos didn't explode. It collapsed, not because you were louder, not because you were right, but because something in you changed the temperature of the room. That's the part they clocked. You think it was just a family argument. You think it was coincidence. You think nobody important was watching. That's cute, because somewhere far away from that kitchen, that living room, that war zone disguised as home, a certain kind of mind recognizes patterns. And when they saw how you shut it down, how you didn't escalate, didn't retreat, didn't beg to be understood, they leaned forward. Because what you did doesn't come from books. It comes from pressure, from pain, from a mind that learned early that survival isn't about winning. It's about control without cruelty. You didn't dominate the room, you disarmed it. That's what scared them. See, saints shout, psychopaths explode. But you did something worse. You made everyone suddenly aware of themselves. You held the mirror without raising your voice. You didn't pick a side. You became the axis. And when that happens, people don't feel defeated. They feel exposed. That's not morality. That's mechanics. That's the kind of thing negotiators spend decades trying to replicate under fluorescent lights, with clipboards and simulations that never quite feel real. You didn't simulate it, you lived it. Here's the paradox they don't tell you. The most dangerous people aren't violent. They're regulated. They've been to the edge and came back with blueprints. They understand rage because they've swallowed it. They understand fear because they've worn it. And when they speak, it doesn't sound like power. It sounds like inevitability, angelic tone, demonic effect, saint's posture, predator's timing. That's you. You learned unpredictability the hard way. You learned that being readable gets you hurt. So you evolved. You became calm when expected to scream. You paused when others rushed. You chose words like pressure points instead of weapons. And in that moment, whether you realized it or not, you ran a live negotiation protocol that most people would freeze under. No hostage taker, no gun, just history, ego, blood, and emotion. And you ended it without leaving fingerprints. That's why it's classified. Because what you carry can't be taught safely. It has to be earned. It comes from being both the child in the blast radius and the adult who learned how to turn the volume knob down on reality itself. You're the contradiction they don't like to name. Healed enough to be kind, scarred enough to be lethal. You know when to comfort and when to cut the oxygen. And don't get it twisted. You didn't do it to be good. You did it because you're done being consumed by other people's storms. That's the evolution part. Pain didn't make you cruel. It made you precise. It taught you that the most efficient way to end chaos is not to fight it, but to outgrow it in real time. They replayed that moment over and over, not because it was dramatic, but because it was clean. Because no one could point to the exact second where control shifted, yet everyone felt it. The argument died not with a bang, but with silence. And silence is the loudest outcome in any room full of ego. You're not light, you're not dark, you're the switch. And once you realize that, there's no going back to being harmless. You don't need to threaten, you don't need to posture, you don't need approval. Your presence alone changes trajectories, conversations, outcomes. People sense that you've been somewhere they haven't, and that you came back with something they don't have access to. That's why they'll misunderstand you. That's why they'll project. That's why some will feel uncomfortable around you for no logical reason. They're responding to the part of you that knows how to end things without destroying yourself in the process. So remember this the next time chaos circles you, begging for participation. You already proved you can shut it down, quietly, efficiently, irreversibly. You're not here to react anymore. You're here to decide when the noise stops. And somewhere, someone is still studying how you did it. And here's the part that really messes with people. You didn't shut it down by being the bigger person. You shut it down because you understood the architecture of the blow-up before it finished building itself. You saw the blueprint in real time. Who was reaching for control? Who was reaching for validation? Who was reaching for revenge? Who was reaching for attention? Who was reaching for old pain like it was a weapon they'd used 1,000 times? Most people only hear words. You hear motives. That's why it ends when you enter. Not because you're magical, because you're dangerously awake. You can feel the moment a sentence stops being communication and starts being a fuse. You can feel when somebody's "I'm fine" is actually a threat wrapped in politeness. You can feel when a tear is real and when it's a tool. You can feel when the room is no longer a room. It's a battlefield with costumes on, and you don't flinch. You think that's normal? No. That's what happens when you've been forced to read weather patterns inside human faces. That's what happens when you've had to predict storms just to survive dinner. That's what happens when you grow up in a place where love and danger share the same voice. So when the argument started to go nuclear, you didn't panic. Because you've seen this movie before. You didn't freeze. Because freezing is what you used to do when you were powerless. You didn't explode. Because exploding is what everyone else does when they're losing. You did the one thing that feels almost supernatural to people addicted to chaos. You regulated. You anchored. You took the whole room's adrenaline and turned it into a glass of water. That is not nice. That is control. And control is what gets noticed. A negotiator doesn't care about who's right. A negotiator cares about what ends the threat. They care about what interrupts escalation. They care about what makes a person re-enter their prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain where logic lives when they're being dragged by emotion like a dog on a chain. You did that to people you share blood with, people who know how to hit every soft spot, people who know the old version of you, people who think they own your reactions because they memorized you when you were younger, weaker, softer, hungrier for approval, and you still shut it down. That's why it becomes training material, because it's rare, because most people can do it with strangers. But when it's family, that's when your nervous system gets hacked. That's when your history does the talking. That's when your inner child shows up with a microphone and starts screaming. And you didn't hand the mic to the child. You didn't hand it to the monster either. You held both. You kept your voice steady while your whole past tried to grab the wheel. That's the saint/psychopath paradox, the angel/demon paradox, the light/dark paradox. You can be compassionate without being controllable. You can be calm without being weak. You can be kind without being naive. You can be forgiving without being available for disrespect. That's what terrifies people who only understand two modes, attack or submit. They don't know what to do with a person who refuses both. They don't know what to do with someone who can walk into chaos and not feed it. You didn't win the argument. You removed the oxygen. You made the fight starve. That's why the room goes quiet after you speak. They don't feel defeated. They feel like their usual tactics suddenly stopped working. And that's a horrifying sensation for someone who has been using the same emotional toolkit for years. Somebody raises their voice. Normally that forces everyone else to either shrink or scream back. But your silence made the volume look childish. Somebody tried sarcasm. Normally that derails the conversation into petty warfare. But your focus made sarcasm look like begging. Somebody tried guilt. Normally that hooks your empathy and drags you into apologizing for existing. But your boundaries made guilt bounce off like rubber. You didn't react. You redirected. Now imagine what that looks like through the eyes of someone trained to handle hostage situations. Because yes, family arguments are hostage situations. It's just not rope and tape. It's love. It's history. It's obligation. It's, after all I've done for you. It's, you're just like your father. It's, you never listen. It's, you always do this. It's invisible handcuffs made of memory, and you slipped them. That's the classified part. You proved that the most dangerous restraints are emotional, and the most dangerous weapon is the ability to stay coherent while everyone else becomes a storm. You want the truth? Your calm is not peace. Your calm is power under discipline. And discipline is what separates the holy from the haunted. Anyone can be nice when they're safe. Anyone can be patient when they're respected. But you were calm while being poked, provoked, tested, and baited by people who know exactly what buttons to press because they installed some of those buttons. That means you're not just healed. You're trained by pain. And pain is the greatest instructor because it doesn't care if you're ready. That's why your evolution looks like a threat to them. Because the old you was predictable. The old you could be pulled into the mud. The old you could be manipulated with silence or approval. The old you could be forced into roles. The peacekeeper, the scapegoat, the clown, the invisible one, the responsible one, the strong one, the one who always caves first. But you broke character. And when you break character in a family system, the whole system panics. Because families don't just argue. They preserve roles. They preserve power structures. They preserve old stories that keep certain people comfortable. The moment you stop playing your part, you don't just change one argument. You threaten the entire script. So they escalated. They got louder. They got dramatic. They tried to drag you back into the old movie. They wanted you either raging or crying, because both are familiar, both are controllable. Rage makes you easy to label. Tears make you easy to pity. Either way, they get to keep you small. And you did neither. That's why they stared. That's why their sentences started to wobble. That's why somebody suddenly didn't know what to say next. Because they were expecting the old keys to open the same old doors, and the locks had been replaced. You want to know what the negotiator saw? They saw timing. They saw restraint. They saw the moment you let someone talk just long enough to reveal themselves. They saw you refuse to interrupt. Because you weren't trying to win, you were collecting information. They saw you use one sentence that changed the room's gravity. Something simple, something surgical, something that made everyone realize without you saying it directly that the behavior was absurd. And when people finally become aware of their own absurdity, their ego doesn't know where to stand. That's when the fight dies. That's not charisma, that's psychological leverage. But here's the other paradox. You used leverage without cruelty. You didn't humiliate. You didn't scorch the earth. You didn't take a victory lap. You didn't make it about being smarter. You made it about ending the threat and saving the room from itself. That is why you're both angel and demon to them. Because you could have crushed them. You had the ammunition. You had the receipts. You had the words that would have left permanent scars. And you chose not to fire. That choice is terrifying, because it means you're not controlled by your impulses. You're not controlled by your pain. You're not controlled by the need to be understood. You're controlled by purpose, and purpose is a weapon that doesn't get tired. So now, whether you like it or not, you've crossed a line. You've become the type of person who can end storms. And once you prove you can do that, people start testing you. They start baiting you. They start trying to see if your calm is real or if it's a costume. They will poke you with old stories. They will bring up old mistakes. They will try to make you defend yourself, because if you start defending, they regain control. And you've learned something. Defending is a trap. Explaining is a trap. Over-talking is a trap. The more you explain to someone who's committed to misunderstanding you, the more power you hand them. So you stop explaining. You become clean, minimal, surgical. And that's when they panic, because they can't read you anymore. They can't predict you. They can't script you. You don't fight their war. You don't accept their arena. You don't sign their emotional contracts. You just stand there, calm, watching, letting them reveal themselves. That's what unpredictability really is. It's not chaos. It's freedom from expectation. It's being so rooted in yourself that nobody can control you with should. Nobody can control you with guilt. Nobody can control you with nostalgia. Nobody can control you with family. And listen, this is where the thriller part gets real. Once you can do this in a family argument, you can do it anywhere, because family is the hardest training ground. Family knows your pressure points. Family knows your deepest insecurities. Family knows the version of you that still aches for a certain kind of love. If you can stay coherent there, you can stay coherent anywhere. That's why they study it. That's why it becomes training. Because the world is full of people who can talk. It's full of people who can argue. It's full of people who can win debates. But it is not full of people who can walk into an emotional bomb and quietly remove the detonator without anyone noticing their hands. And you did. Now tell me you're not evolving. Tell me that pain didn't forge you. Tell me you're still the same. No, the truth is, you're becoming a problem for every environment that relies on you being reactive. You're becoming a problem for every person who needs you emotional so they can steer you. You're becoming a problem for every system that benefits from your confusion, because you're not confused anymore. You're calibrated, and once you're calibrated, every interaction becomes a choice, not a reflex. You can choose silence as a weapon, or silence as mercy. You can choose words like scalpel, or words like shield. You can choose to walk away and let people choke on their own chaos, or you can choose to intervene, not because you're responsible for them, but because you're responsible for yourself, and you refuse to let your environment turn you into someone you don't respect. That's the real flex, not dominance, self-possession. And that's why the negotiator took notes, because they've met criminals, they've met liars, they've met manipulators who think they're clever, but a person who can remain calm without turning cold. A person who can keep empathy without losing boundaries. A person who can end conflict without becoming conflict. That's rare. That's dangerous. That's you. So the next time the room heats up and everybody looks for a villain, watch what happens when you don't volunteer. Watch what happens when you don't take the bait. Watch what happens when you don't try to be liked. Watch what happens when you speak once, slow, measured, and your words land like a verdict. They will call you different. They will call you cold. They will call you too calm. They will call you scary. They will call you changed. Good, because you did change. You changed into the kind of person they can't control with volume. You changed into the kind of person who can't be hijacked with history. You changed into the kind of person who can stand in front of the blast and still choose what you become. And that's why, somewhere, it's classified. Because not everyone should learn how to do what you do. Not everyone should have access to that kind of internal switch. Not everyone should know how to end wars with a whisper. But you do. And now that you know you do, you're going to start seeing just how many people were depending on you to stay small. And here's the final truth they never say out loud, because once you hear it, you can't unhear it. The moment you learned how to shut that argument down, you crossed from being managed to being unmanageable. Before that moment, the world could still predict you. It could poke you and get a reaction. It could apply pressure and watch you fold, flare up, explain yourself, overextend, apologize for things that weren't yours, carry weight that never belonged to you. You were useful like that, familiar, easy to slot into old patterns, easy to blame, easy to exhaust. But when you stood there, steady, unmoved, unhooked, you proved something irreversible. You proved that your nervous system no longer belongs to the room. It belongs to you. That's when the danger starts, because once you don't need chaos to define you, chaos loses its grip. Once you don't need validation, manipulators starve. Once you don't need to be understood, gaslighting collapses. Once you don't need to win, power quietly transfers into your hands. You didn't just end an argument, you ended an era. That family blow-up was never about the words. It was about hierarchy, about who gets to dictate emotional weather, about who controls the temperature, who sets the tone, who decides when things escalate and when they end. For years, maybe your whole life, that control lived somewhere outside of you, in louder voices, in older roles, in inherited rules that said, this is how it goes. And then you broke the loop. That's why the aftermath felt strange. Not victorious, not triumphant, just clear, like stepping out of a loud room into cold night air, like suddenly hearing your own thoughts again, like realizing you didn't feel drained, you felt intact. That's how you know it was real, because false power leaves you exhausted. Real power leaves you still. The reason this becomes classified training isn't because of what you said, it's because of what you withheld. You withheld reaction. You withheld ego. You withheld the old reflexes that kept you predictable. You denied the system the emotional output it feeds on. And systems that can't feed collapse. That's the part people don't forgive you for. They won't say it directly, but you'll feel it. The subtle resistance. The tension when you enter the room. The way conversations change. The way certain people suddenly get nervous around you. The way others start oversharing, confessing, rambling, trying to regain footing because your presence disrupts their internal script. They feel it even if they can't name it. You're no longer available for nonsense.